The president hadn't laughed in 3 days. The butler was full of sadness when he told me about it. I kept my eyes glued to the screen, and I didn't raise my head and nodded perfunctorily. Wrap it around me. The reason I can say so confidently is because I am Kennedy Bray's 37th personal assistant. And the reason why I was able to beat the first 36 competitors and successfully stayed was due to my superpowers. In addition to my professional ability, from a young age, I could see the numbers on everyone's heads. Some people are 0, some people are 1, and the head of the teaching director of my elementary school, who likes yin and yang weird father-in-law, is a big 8. I was still puzzled by what that number meant, until one day, I overheard the dean of education talking to his wife on the phone, saying that he had been constipated for 8 days and would go to the hospital after work. That's when I realized that my superpower was the ability to see other people's constipation days. Speaking of which, my privilege has been fully demonstrated. Later, when Kennedy Bray interviewed me, he asked me what I could see from him. I glanced at the number 5 on his head, and I hesitated to speak. President, the stomach is not very good. Kennedy Bray. Fortunately, he nodded and let me stay before leaving. In this way, I successfully passed the interview and got this high-paying job. I was asked where I got my conclusion that Kennedy Bray had a bad stomach after the interview, and I shrugged. President, you also know that there are a little problems in this profession in general. What kind of stomach problems? Claustrophobia, exaggerated allergies to women. The other party left with a look of great benefit. After becoming Kennedy Bray's assistant, I intuitively felt how difficult he was as a person. Fortunately, with his superpowers, I can probably guess when he's in a bad mood and avoid it accurately. And as soon as the number on his head was 3 or greater, I would sneak some laxatives into his coffee. My family's ancestral secret recipe works quickly and does not hurt the body. So every time Kennedy Bray drank the coffee I brewed, he would go into the bathroom and pop in less than half an hour. Bitter and hateful, he went in and came out with a smile on his face. After the housekeeper complained to me this time, I added laxatives to Kennedy Bray's coffee as usual. 10 minutes later, Kennedy Bray went into the bathroom with her ass covered. This time, the medicine seemed to be a little stronger, and Kennedy Bray pulled it for half an hour. Looking at Kennedy Bray, who was smiling contentedly after coming out, the housekeeper nodded with satisfaction. Young master hasn't pulled it like this for a long time. After saying that, he shook my hand gratefully. The young master has never been so out of control. You are the first woman to let the young master have such a good time. Isn't it common sense for you to listen to this yourself? Originally, I thought I could rely on my unique skills to hold this job firmly. That was until I went out with Kennedy Bray. At that time, Kennedy Bray had been blackface for 5 days straight. I thought that it would be beneficial for the negotiations for our representatives not to be smiling. So it wasn't until the day of the return trip that I made Kennedy Bray a cup of coffee. Originally, I had just the right amount of time, and after drinking coffee, Kennedy Bray had a good rest in the morning and returned in the afternoon. But I don't know what's going on. This time after a full hour, the medicine still didn't work. Kennedy Bray, on the other hand, didn't know what was going on and rushed me back. I originally thought it was because the medicine had expired after a long time, but it didn't work this time. On this business trip, Kennedy Bray's usual car was overhauled and the driver asked for leave, and he drove my car. So on the way back, when Kennedy Bray said he was sick to his stomach, I was more panicked than him. That's what happened. That's what the situation is. But I'm still looking at the situation. Boss, how are you feeling now? Hold on, boss. There are still 2.5 hours to get to the city, and if this is pulled in the car, it will stink. Shut up, Kennedy Bray said with a pained look on his face. When I heard this, I drove obediently and didn't speak. However, the sky did not fulfill people's wishes. This section of the road was full of potholes, and Rao was an old driver like me who drove for 2.5 months and stumbled. After driving a pit, the car shook, and Kennedy Bray snorted, and my heart panicked. You have to hold back, boss. This is my new car. If you pull me on, I will shift. The newly bought house has to be. Daddy was even more panicked. You're not the president, so give full play to the self-control that your president is proud of. Parking. I braked sharply, and Kennedy Bray grunted again. What's wrong, Boss. Kennedy Bray waved his hand and said weakly, "It's okay, I'll take it easy. Can you get to the city in half an hour?" Kennedy Bray held his stomach with one hand and pressed his temple with the other. Kennedy Bray. My car landed 170,000 HMM. Kennedy Bray was puzzled. It costs more than 100 million to buy high-speed rail. Good guy. Half an hour to the city. I directly lit the fuel tank, and we went to the moon. Kennedy Bray. It's a kiss to the boss. And I can't bear to see him really uncomfortable. Well, it's because he ate my stuff, and I have to make up for it. Kennedy Bray. I'll go down and see if there's a public toilet nearby. Kennedy Bray nodded. Stay safe. Don't go too far. Call me if there's something. Come on. What's the use of calling you in your situation? To drive the bad guys away by crackling. I looked at him hesitantly, but I didn't say it after thinking about it. 10 minutes later, I rushed back. Boss, there's a good news and a bad news that you want to hear first. What good news? I've found a place that makes you crackle. You found a public toilet. No. I shook my head. That's the bad news I'm going to say. Kennedy Bray's eyebrows skipped a beat, and he said with a dark face, "Don't tell me it's what I think it is. I don't know if what you think is what I want to say, but that's all I have to do now." Kennedy Bray's hand clutching his stomach was already bruised, and it looked like he had endured it to the limit. Finally, the cold boss finally lowered his arrogant head and nodded at me. Where? Speaking of that place, that's pretty awesome. I helped Kennedy Bray to move over there, and subconsciously began to advertise in a thick broadcast tone. A line near the river. Enjoy the magnificent river scenery alone. With the tree in your back, you can experience an extraordinary artistic conception. With the green leaves, with the birds and finches as neighbors. Nature, just between breaths. I can't count the first time Kennedy Bray has been silent, but he can't hide his eyes when he wants to stab. It doesn't matter, as long as I look at the flowers, the grass and the trees. It's not me who wants to cut it. I finally moved to the feng shui treasure I was looking for, and Kennedy Bray was still struggling, and it seemed that he was still doing psychological construction for himself. As a qualified dogleg, you must be anxious about the boss urgency, and solve the boss embarrassment. I immediately ran to the side, picked 2 leaves and handed them to him. Kennedy Bray took a deep breath, gritted his teeth and said, "There's paper in the car. I brought it." I nodded. My expression was extremely sincere. "I know, but it's not for you. Aren't you shy? You can use this to block your face." I held the leaf up to my face. Kennedy Bray, as a qualified assistant, of course I will help you control the wind, but I heard that the pressure will not be smooth, so I can use this to reduce the pressure a little. Shut up. One more word will deduct 500. I immediately stopped, ready to go away and give him some space to be alone. But before leaving, he was still a little entangled, hesitated for a few seconds, opened his mobile phone, typed a few words, and handed it to Kennedy Bray. "Do you still want the leaves?" And it hasn't disappeared in front of my eyes within 5 seconds, and 20,000 yuan will be deducted. As soon as the words fell, I jumped out for several meters, showing with my actions that I would never give the temperamental capitalists a chance to exploit. Although there are no people in this barren mountain and wilderness, I don't dare to run too far if I want to give Kennedy Bray a lookout. I stopped after running 20 meters. This position is just right. I can't see Kennedy Bray, but if someone does shout, he can hear it, and the distance of more than 20 meters is enough for him to wear pants. There were a lot of wildflowers growing where I was standing, so I took out my phone and took a picture and sent it to my girlfriend. "Girlfriend, why are you in the grass?" "Me, guess. Girlfriend, you're here too." The sense of substitution is so strong that I seem to have seen a little girl with mushroom heads with bangs lowered and curiously asked Kennedy Bray if she was. "Ha ha ha, it's funny, ha 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 ha." I laughed and sent a message to my girlfriend to remember what had happened today. Sadly, however, I didn't pay attention to my feet while I was concentrating on typing, and with a click, I felt like I had stepped on something. Looking down, the porous shape of the object. The hole is hexagonal. May is a honeycomb? In the spirit of the dead Tao friends and the poor Tao, I immediately kicked the honeycomb back with the speed of the ringing of the bell, and then quickly hid in the grass. The honeycomb rolled for a few meters and then stopped. and several bees flew out of it and stopped in mid-air. I don't know what breed it is, but it still looks pretty scary. The lead bee looked around and saw no one in sight, and began to fly in the direction of Kennedy Bray. My conscience itched, and I immediately opened my phone and sent a message to Kennedy Bray. Kennedy Bray, run, there are wasps. For a while, I didn't know whether to pray that Kennedy Bray was finished, or pray that Kennedy Bray had the habit of going to the toilet and playing with his phone. Half a minute later, there was a scream of whoosh not far away, followed by a series of expletives. It's dirty, and I can't bear to listen to it any longer. Alas, it seems that Kennedy Bray has not finished pulling, and he does not have a good habit of going to the toilet to play with his phone. After a long time, Kennedy Bray finally came out with her ass covered. For the first time in the face of my concerned gaze, Kennedy Bray's normally strategic face showed a gritted tooth. Kennedy Bray, you're all right. What do you say? Kennedy Bray's face was so black that he could drip water. I looked at the sky and the earth with a weak heart, and then my eyes were subconsciously attracted to Kennedy Bray's upright buttocks. Sensing my gaze, Kennedy Bray covered her ass in anger. Me. Now if I explain that I didn't mean to see it, he won't believe it. Forget it, I'm tired. Kennedy Bray, why don't you get in the car first? Kennedy Bray nodded, limping into the car. Considering the boss ass, I didn't dare to drive too fast the whole time. When the car arrived at the hospital, Kennedy Bray's ass was even more cocked. When Kennedy Bray pulled out of the car with her butt covered, she was so embarrassed that she was about to break. As the company's 5 good employees, it is necessary to be anxious about the boss urgency and solve the boss embarrassment. I've studied it in private. Wow boss, now your ass is cocked enough to hold a whole bottle of soda. Kennedy Bray, I tried so hard to save the day, and instead of thanking me, Kennedy Bray looked even angrier. Alas, a man's heart is a needle. We big women are busy with their careers every day, and we really don't understand what these little men think every day. After treating the wound under the doctor's curious gaze, I sent Kennedy Bray home. As soon as he drove the car into the yard, Kennedy Bray received a call from the Public Relations Department. Kennedy Bray, you just went to the hospital. What's wrong? That one was secretly photographed on the hot search, or you should watch it yourself. As soon as I unlocked the phone, a bunch of pushes popped up. Pound, the head of the Bray family, Kennedy Bray, was sent to the hospital on suspicion of playing the alphabet game Pound. Pound do M for love. Kennedy Bray gets a small buttocks pound. Kennedy Bray's face grew darker and darker, and as soon as he entered the door, he notified the PR department to start a meeting. I wanted to leave when he saw that he was safe and alive, but Kennedy Bray gave me a look and I was left behind. Kennedy Bray turned on the video conference, and I turned on the computer. Kennedy Bray was talking to the PR department about what to do, and I was secretly reading the novel. They quarreled over there because of disagreements, and the scumbag and the white-eyed wolf son in my side of the novel also chased his mother to the crematorium. Damn, although this kind of text can think of the ending every time I read the beginning, it can still control me for half an hour. When I was ready to move my cervical spine after watching the finale, I looked up and saw Kennedy Bray staring at my phone screen. What's wrong, Kennedy Bray? Even if I panicked, I pretended to be calm on my face. Seriously, Kennedy Bray deserves to be the boss, not to mention handsome, but also has a kind of momentum. For the next period of time, I need you to cooperate with me. Kennedy Bray didn't pursue me about reading novels at work, and went straight to the point. As his assistant, haven't I been cooperating with him? Also, tomorrow is the weekend. He doesn't want me to work overtime, right? Kennedy Bray sighed and began to explain to me. It turned out that this candid shooting incident was planned by a rival company, in order to smear Kennedy Bray's image and shake the shareholders' support for him. So after consulting with the PR department, I decided to find me a partner to stabilize the hearts of the shareholders, said the lucky player. It won't be. That's right, it's you. What kind of ancient romance routine is this? The president found that the little assistant was innocent and unpretentious, attracted his attention, and then began to abuse her body and heart. She ran away from him and chased her, and it was difficult to fly. I didn't speak, and my mind began to look for reasons for refusal, but I just hurt him in the ass, and I have to make up for it. Kennedy Bray, it's not that I don't want to help you, it's just that 7-figure pay plus year-end bonus doubled. Then again, no one else knows Kennedy Bray, so it's better to leave this task to me. Heh. But boss, is it considered overtime when I cooperate with you? What about my original salary? Count your paid leave. Kennedy Bray's expression was a little speechless. Thank you, boss. I will die in the company. I am a little screw. I will go wherever I am needed. After the decision was made, I drove home. Kennedy Bray was waiting for me downstairs at my house the next morning. In order to calm the emotions of shareholders, Kennedy Bray arranged a family dinner for Bray today. The family banquet of the rich is a kind of low-key luxury. It is too extravagant and seems to have no connotation. And it is too low-key, and does not reflect the attention. But when Kennedy Bray said that the dress and jewelry for this family dinner were mine, I stood up again. Bray's family is a family-owned company, and its companies are involved in many aspects such as daily chemicals, games, entertainment, and e-commerce. And it is a huge business empire. Let's just say that Kennedy Bray's and I combined assets can be in the top 10 of Forbes. There were a lot of bigwigs who attended the banquet, and I followed Kennedy Bray to recognize it, but I didn't remember any of them. Kennedy Bray was eating while he was talking to his cousin about business. I was eating while Kennedy Bray was talking to his uncle, and uncle about the new policy. Kennedy Bray was eating while he asked his grandparents about their health. Angry, Kennedy Bray gritted his teeth and whispered if I hadn't eaten in a month. I don't want to, either, but the food in this restaurant is really delicious. Fortunately, Kennedy Bray's family were very talkative and kind to me the whole time. At the end of the day, Kennedy Bray's grandmother insisted on keeping me at the old house for the night. The old man's kindness was hard to refuse, so I followed Kennedy Bray and his parents to the old house. When I arrived at the place, the old lady took me around and went to rest. Bray's old house was huge, and after a walk around I felt like I had digested all the food I had eaten in the evening. Embarrassed to call for a servant, I knocked on Kennedy Bray's study door. Kennedy Bray, are you hungry? Kennedy Bray was wearing lagere and gold-rimmed glasses, and the moment he looked up from his computer screen, I was a little stunned. You're hungry? I nodded, a little embarrassed. Kennedy Bray glanced at the time and asked hesitantly, the aunt of the old house is old. She should rest now, or I'll do it for you. I tried to refuse, but my stomach crumbled at the right time. Kennedy Bray laughed and got up and went to the kitchen. He shouldn't cook very often, and his movements are a little jerky. High-end ingredients only need a simple way to cook. And Kennedy Bray, who has been busy for half an hour, brought out a bowl of cold salad, green vegetables, a few shrimps and a few pieces of beef. And Kennedy Bray also cut a few lemons. Let's just say that the menu is on par with Korean cafeterias. Kennedy Bray, why are there lemons? Greasy, just a few shrimps and a few pieces of beef. Are they really that greasy? Isn't this really a greasy solution? Kennedy Bray, I was about to say something, but when I thought that the man in front of me who made me a supper in the middle of the night was my boss, I swallowed the words of complaint again. Thank you, Kennedy Bray. You're so good. After returning to the room after eating the salad, as soon as I turned on the phone, it was full of food broadcasts. You talk about these people, and you don't advertise, just torture people. Can't think about it anymore, and be hungrier? I got up and opened the window, opened my mouth wide and drank some northwest wind to satisfy my hunger. I took the money to do things, and after receiving the money from Kennedy Bray, I got up early to make the old lady happy. So when Kennedy Bray came downstairs, I was already sitting at the table, and making the old lady laugh. Kennedy Bray had just sat down when he received a wide roll of the eye. Alas, it's better to get up early in the morning to accompany the old lady for a walk and breakfast. Where is like some unfilial grandson, sleeping until 3 o'clock in the morning before getting up. Kennedy Bray's hands smeared with the jam and smiled, and said to the old lady for mercy, Grandma, you have a new person and forget the old one. Go and go. Don't talk if you can't speak. After speaking, he smiled and put the bird's nest in front of me. Elvira Thoreau, I've wronged you with Kennedy Bray. He's a piece of wood. I wanted to nod my head in agreement, but I could only shake my head at the thought of begging for a living under this piece of wood in the future. No grievance. No grievance. The old lady also wanted to talk about Kennedy Bray's shortcomings, but Kennedy Bray interrupted dissatisfied. Grandma, I'm still here. You pay attention. The old lady glanced him up and down and snorted, but it saved him some face. After breakfast, I went back to the office with Kennedy Bray. Before leaving, I remembered that I hadn't picked up something, so I shoved my phone into Kennedy Bray's hand and hurried upstairs. When I went downstairs, I saw Kennedy Bray leaning against the front of the car with my phone, smiling intriguingly. "What's wrong? Assistant Cheen just sent me a document, and I forwarded it to you." I nodded in agreement, but Kennedy Bray stood still in front of the car door with his hands on his chest. I was full of question marks, and when I was about to ask, I realized the note I had given Kennedy Bray, and my hand on the door stiffened. "Hey." Kennedy Bray looked at me with a smirk. "Well, I can explain it." "Okay, then I'll listen to it," reluctantly. Me, trembling too much to speak. "This, profiteer capitalist. It's not you. It's not you. How can it be our generous, handsome, smart, domineering Kennedy Bray? It's all my friend's fault for secretly changing it while I'm asleep, and I forgot to change it back." "Really, really, really?" I nodded earnestly. Kennedy Bray didn't say believe it or say no, but he gave me the phone back. I breathed a sigh of relief and just fooled it over. But as soon as I got in the car, Kennedy Bray sat away from me, with his hands on his chest. I talked to him, and he doesn't have a mouth and a nose that isn't a nose. I struggled to find a topic to break the embarrassment. "Wow, Kennedy Bray, your car is purple." Kennedy Bray nodded. Shortly after I returned to the office, I was told that I was going on a business trip with Kennedy Bray. After the last accident, Kennedy Bray never drank the coffee I brewed again. However, due to a blessing in disguise, the number above his head has been 0 for half a month. Before leaving, Kennedy Bray went to the toilet on a special trip, and it seems that the last incident left a big psychological shadow on him. Anyway, I'm actually quite curious. You say that the president doesn't wear warm clothes, and if he does, is he wearing them one by one? Put on your underwear first, then tuck your warm jacket into your warm pants, and finally tuck your shirt into your trousers. Before I could finish thinking about it, Kennedy Bray came out. I opened my mouth to ask, but I didn't dare to ask at the thought of Kennedy Bray's dark face. This business trip was to attend a banquet in Lynchy. I'm also out of the picture, and I'm qualified to attend a dinner party of this level. As soon as I arrived at the hotel, Kennedy Bray arranged for someone to come and do my makeup. After the various projects were done and I put on my gown, I was standing in front of the full-length mirror, and Kennedy Bray knocked on the door and came in. "It's almost time. Are you okay here?" I hurriedly turned around and caught the surprise in Kennedy Bray's eyes. "How's that? It's pretty." Kennedy Bray nodded, smiling with a hint of pampering. "It's okay, just one. I really won't praise people, and I will punish you to go back and write a 10,000-word review to describe my beauty against you." Kennedy Bray picked up my handbag and slapped me lightly. I pouted and followed him to get about to leave, but he suddenly stopped and turned his head sideways. "Then it's okay to compensate you with a word and $1. As soon as the words fell on my head, an afterimage appeared. Good, good. No matter how good a compliment is, it's better to spend a lot of money in such a relaxed atmosphere. Kennedy Bray and I arrived at the banquet hall. It was my first time on this kind of occasion, so I was a little nervous and followed Kennedy Bray the whole time. Kennedy Bray, talking to people about business. I stood by and nodded and smiled. Kennedy Bray toasted, and I followed suit, smiling and nodding, usually twittering in front of me. "Why is it so quiet today?" I was embarrassed to admit my nervousness, and said stiffly, "Because my character today is a quiet fairy." Kennedy Bray smiled and was about to open his mouth to complain, when he was interrupted by a strange man. Kennedy Bray. Kennedy Bray saw the visitor and returned to his official smile. "Kelly Ann, long time no see." "It's been a long time since I've seen Kennedy Bray, but I've often seen Kennedy Bray on hot searches this time," said Kelly Ann, glancing at Kennedy Bray's ass again, and pointed to something. "Kennedy Bray, are you alright?" "Thanks to Kelly Ann, I'm not bad, but I heard that as factory was put into use after failing to pass the inspection. Kelly Ann should be very distressed during this time." The two of them spoke to my mang, but they still had to show a happy look, and I was tired and panicked for them. The two of them said a word, and I began to wander away from the world again. By the time she came to her senses, that Kelly Ann was gone. "Boss, that Kelly Ann is My nemesis. He was the one who broke the story last time I photographed. I nodded, looking at Kennedy Bray and stopping. How, boss? There is a convention in our city. What a convention. The world's rivals eventually become lovers. After all, the enemy is undressed. Kennedy Bray gritted his teeth and emphasized to me, he's a man. I nodded to indicate that I understood. This is a small pattern. Our city is now learning from the advanced experience of the city next door, and there are quite a lot of male CPs. Now this is called pure love. Kennedy Bray, then the president of your city, will also fall in love with the sworn enemy, who broke his bones and took the opportunity to short his company. I thought for a moment, then hesitated. SHHH. The script of Chasing the Husband Crematorium. It's a bit earthy but it's still quite popular. Kennedy Bray paused. His face became even more gloomy, and his tone was annoyed. Say another thing about deducting your salary. Okay, good. Count you ruthless? But my boss spoiled himself. Looking at Kennedy Bray, who was frowning at Kelly as anger, I opened my mouth to comfort. Kennedy Bray, don't be angry. That Kelly knows that endocrine is not good at a glance. I'll help you curse him for not being able to. Kennedy Bray, don't ask me how I know. Kelly has a big 9 on top of her head. At the end of the session, the organizers arranged dinner, and Kennedy Bray and I happened to be at the same table as Kelly Ann. Rarely, I had the self-consciousness of being an assistant. Kennedy Bray was at odds with that Kelly Ann, and I was staring at Kelly Ann with a murderous frown on my hands over my chest. Just as the waiter started to serve the food, I stared at Kelly Ann menacingly as I picked up the silver chopsticks on the side. When I poked the chopsticks into the dish, the tips of the chopsticks turned black. I immediately put down my chopsticks and told Kennedy Bray, Kennedy Bray, the dish is poisonous, and the chopsticks have turned black. Kennedy Bray sighed, looked at the chopsticks and then at me, and stopped. Finally, Kennedy Bray spoke. Is there a possibility that you are eating black sesame rice balls? Time stood still for 3 seconds, and I laughed sheepishly. I'm sorry, I'm overly nervous, afraid of losing face again. I ate and drank quietly for the rest of the day. Towards the end of the meal, Kennedy Bray suddenly got up. I thought he was leaving, and I subconsciously wanted to get up with him. I'm going to the bathroom. Kennedy Bray should have meant that he was going to the bathroom, not leaving, so I didn't have to follow him. But I was already a little nervous, and I had just made a fool of myself, and my brain was a mess. Hey, oh. I stood up and walked in front of Kennedy Bray to open the way. Big young master. All dodge. The banquet hall, that was originally staggered, suddenly fell silent. The smirk on Kennedy Bray's face was completely uncontrollable, and his face turned blue and white for a while. I kept my head down and didn't dare to look him in the eye again. Fortunately, the people present were all human spirits, and soon the scene was lively again. Looking at me as I stood still, Kennedy Bray sighed, pulled me to say hello to the organizers, and left. I'm sorry, Kennedy Bray. I seem to have disgraced you again. I kept my head down, my eyes fixed on the tips of my shoes, and I didn't dare look at Kennedy Bray. Forget it. It's not once, or twice anyway. Kennedy Bray, you're not angry. I'm angry with you every day. I'm going to die in 2 days. I breathed a sigh of relief, and felt a little uneasy in my conscience. Kennedy Bray, to apologize to you. I'll treat you to dinner. Kennedy Bray turned around and walked away. I thought it was a refusal, and I didn't know if I should follow for a moment. Why don't you go back and change your clothes? You're going to dress like this and go out to dinner. Okay, I'll take 2 quick steps to follow. The hallway was brightly lit, and Kennedy Bray was much softer. I suddenly remembered that pampering smile when Kennedy Bray came to pick me up in the afternoon. Days back to my room to change my clothes, and in a daze, I took Kennedy Bray to the store where I had already done my homework. 2 bowls of snail noodles. After ordering, I started to run out of words. Kennedy Bray, have you ever eaten snail noodles before? Kennedy Bray shook his head. I rarely eat these snacks. Then you've come to the right place today. This shop is very authentic. The authentic snail noodles didn't smell bad, but the spicy smell still caused Kennedy Bray to sneeze several times. I suddenly regretted bringing him to eat snail noodles. Kennedy Bray, if you're not used to it, there's a Japanese restaurant with a good rating nearby. Let's eat this. But this. Don't talk nonsense. Just eat this. I don't like Japanese food. I'm afraid of nuclear sewage. The shop moved quickly, and it didn't take 2 minutes to serve it. The moment the snail noodles were served, I saw such a tangled expression on Kennedy Bray's face for the first time, especially when I showed off a big mouthful. Kennedy Bray was shocked and confused, and there was a hint of eagerness in his patience. Kennedy Bray, did you know there's a saying about snail noodles? I took a sip of the spicy soup, and gasped as I spoke to Kennedy Bray. What words? There are only 2 kinds of people in the world, those who love snail noodles, and those who have never eaten snail noodles. After saying that, I took another sip of powder. Kennedy Bray struggled for a moment, then took a stick of powder and put it in his mouth as if he were dead. Within a few seconds, his voice was louder and faster than mine. On the way back, I couldn't help but start making fun of Kennedy Bray. Kennedy Bray, don't you usually eat things that smell? There will always be special circumstances. This kind of special situation doesn't happen very often, but it's always a surprise, isn't it? Kennedy Bray looked at me and said seriously, his eyes shining like water, looking straight at me, making me feel a little uncomfortable. I don't know if it's because of the moonlight tonight, but I always feel that Kennedy Bray is covered with a filter tonight, and the whole person is a lot gentler. When I realized that I had been staring at Kennedy Bray for a long time, I hurriedly began to change the subject. It's going to be nice tonight. Yes, it's a beautiful night tonight. He's not going to confess to me, is he? That's not what I mean, is it? How should I get back? There is nothing difficult in the world, as long as you are willing to escape. Overwhelmed by this warm atmosphere, I began to babble to escape. Oops, my cat just called me, and said our toilet was blocked. I'll go back and cook for it first, and then I'll see Kennedy Bray. With that, I ran away without looking back. When I got back to my room, I tossed and turned in bed and couldn't sleep, my mind full of what had just happened. I'm afraid I'm thinking too much, and I'm afraid that Kennedy Bray really likes me. Growing up, I was confident, but I was always hesitant when it came to Kennedy Bray. It is true that I firmly believe that I am worthy of anyone's love, but I still lack a shred of courage. I sighed helplessly, rolled over and continued to struggle. Early the next morning, I got on the bus with Kennedy Bray with 2 dark circles under my eyes. Kennedy Bray turned his head to the side, looked at me stiff as he sat next to me, and asked softly, I didn't sleep well last night. I froze for a moment, realized he was asking me, and nodded again. Have you had breakfast? I shook my head. I slept too late last night, and when I woke up, it was almost time to return. Kennedy Bray didn't know where to conjure a bottle of milk and a loaf of bread. Eat first. I took the bread and took a small bite. Kennedy Bray looked at me, was silent for a long time, and then whispered, what I said last night seems to have put a lot of pressure on you. It's my problem. It's that I'm too anxious. I should have given you time to think about it, but I can't help myself, and I want to express my heart to you. So Elvira Thoreau, you have plenty of time to think about it. Don't think too much. I'll always wait for you. Kennedy Bray seemed a little nervous, and his voice trembled a little. I can't deny that I'm a little happy, but more of a confused. Kennedy Bray thought the snail noodles were delicious, just because he had never eaten them before. But can people who are used to eating Michelin really eat snail noodles for a lifetime? Kennedy Bray didn't speak again, leaving me in a quiet daze. Halfway through I got a call from Grandma Kennedy Bray, inviting me to her birthday party. So as soon as I arrived at the office, Kennedy Bray gave me a day off to rest and prepare. By the way, on the day of the old lady's birthday party, I was still stuck in the horns and couldn't get out. Elvira Thoreau, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? She saw that I was absent-minded, and the old lady said with concern, Grandma, why did you agree to me being Kennedy Bray's girlfriend? What? You think I should be firmly against it, and then give you a blank check to stay away from him, and ask him to marry the daughter of a celebrity? I didn't speak, so I acquiesced. Our Bray family has not yet fallen to the point where we need the president to sell his body to maintain growth. The old lady smiled and rubbed my face, and continued, I believe in my grandson's vision, and I have eyes and brains, and I will see and feel with my heart. Besides, our family has always been very democratic, but Kennedy Bray and I, it's fake. You know. I looked at the old man in front of me in amazement. After living for so many years, I can't even see this little thing. Then you're still What do you think I'm for? I'm only kind to my granddaughter-in-law. Silly boy. I'm good to you because you're worth it. Not to mention that the stinky boy is already interesting to you. Even if you, too, can't make it in the end, I still like you. Because you're you. After the old lady's words, the fog that had been haunting my mind disappeared in an instant. I'm so good. Kennedy Bray doesn't like me, because he has a bad eye. Likes me because I deserve it. After my worries were relieved, I was relieved. So I drank a few more drinks. When Kennedy Bray came to me, I was in a slightly drunken state, looking at me, a little sluggish. Kennedy Bray smiled and led me to the corner of the garden, blown by the wind. The alcohol began to rise. Kennedy Bray. I think I've thought about it. Kennedy Bray's voice was muffled in reply, as if he was a little nervous. I said, in a softer voice, I want to be a good night relationship with you. Kennedy Bray looked at me in a daze, his eyes filled with surprise. Kennedy Bray was so excited that he suddenly reached out and hugged me tightly. It was rare to see Kennedy Bray so excited, and I couldn't help it, and quickly took a bite on his face. What's the matter? Don't let me kiss my boyfriend. How's that, girlfriend? As soon as the words fell, his lips pressed down involuntarily, and his lips were close to each other. Conquering the city. The end.